This is Learning by Doing, a podcast for employers offering young people technology work experiences. I'm Daniel Devine, an educational technologist and specialist in developing digital skills. In this episode, we're going to be looking at work experience. I had a really interesting conversation with Maria, who works in Shetland, about how she got started running work experiences, the challenges she faced, how she overcame them. We chatted through some of the myths of running work experience, and also we had a really good chat about some of the things that you can put in place to make it go smoothly, some hacks, some tips, some good best practice. So let's get started. Hi Maria, thank you for joining us. Could you maybe introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Yes, sure. So I'm Maria. I am the co-founder of Mesomorphic. I'm also the managing director, and we're a software development company based in Shetland. We work with rural businesses to support them to adopt bespoke software solutions to enhance their businesses. And I've offered experiential work placements to over a dozen young people.
So I understand that you've been offering work experience for a few years now, and you've seen quite a few high school pupils come through the business. Now, you're quite a small company. What's in it for Mesomorphic? Why did you get started?
It's another form of marketing, really. We live in quite a small community, and we are building a business that is not commonly associated with Shetland. When people think of Shetland, they think of, Jimmy Perez, Shetland ponies, agriculture, engineering. And the digital sector is not something that's often thought about. So we knew that we had to raise awareness of the digital tech sector, not just in Shetland, but overall.
What did you do on your work experience, Maria? Did you have a good experience? Is that what's inspired you here?
From the personal point of view, I did not have a good work experience. And it's something that stuck with me for quite a long time. My work experience was being put in a nursery. It was the worst place to put me. And that's one of the driving forces behind why we offer the work placements, but also taking a different approach with the work placement. So that's more the personal side of it.
It's funny how these things stick with us, although it's perhaps not surprising given that it's our first real taster of the world of work. I was quite lucky with my work experience. I got to go to a chip fabrication company, but that was purely because my next door neighbour did that. I remember a lot of my classmates were primary schools, mailrooms at banks, school kitchens, places like that. So it's a really unequal thing. So I think it's great that you are offering something, particularly in digital, because the digital economy is a space that I feel like a lot of young people don't really have an accurate perception of. So when did you offer your first placement, Maria? How did it go?
I remember our first placement was towards the end of 2016, beginning of 2017. And we had the student come in who expressed an interest in being a software developer because his dad was also a software developer. And that was the only link that he had to the job role. And he came in and he was with us for, I think it was a week. Yeah, he was with us for a week. And the reason why I'm laughing is because we were both learning very quickly as we went, because that was the first time I've actually offered a full work placement within the business. And there was definitely a lot of, let's try this, let's try that, let's see if this works. Oh gosh, no, that doesn't work. Let's try again. So yeah, it was an interesting learning curve for both of us. I had my work placement and learning how to do a work placement, and he had a work placement and how to be a software developer.
I quite like that way of putting it. So what did Maria learn on her work experience learning how to offer a work placement?
One of the interesting things I learned through that for the earlier days of our work placements was I was always planning everything down to the last minute. And yeah, you can't do that. Absolutely cannot do that at all. What I also felt as well was an excitement about how we could develop this further. And the first time you do this, you are probably going to be sitting there at the end going, well, that could have gone better. And that's okay. And that was pretty much how I felt for the first few times. But I also felt like I was doing something important for me and to give back to the community.
I like that we've circled back to this idea of giving back a few times, because it is a really nice feeling, especially if you've not been involved so much with young people or in schools. They do really appreciate it, and you do feel like you're making a difference. So not only is this a really good marketing opportunity, and also for recruitment, which I think is something that we'll touch on shortly. It's also, it feels like a good and the right thing to do. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that. But let's look a bit more at the logistics of offering a placement. Now, the traditional format is probably a week long, 9 to 5. People comes into an office. But I've seen some companies be really successful offering different formats of placements. What have you found works well for you, Maria?
We have tried a variety of formats now. We've done the traditional week-long 9 till 5 sitting in the office, and we have had students that have come on by themselves or students that come in pairs, and we've found that actually when we speak with the coordinators from the schools, it's like, well, can we get 2 students that want to come along, because that pairing actually solves a lot of the initial problems that we have for students that come along around the confidence and just getting that moral support there. The other options we've tried is we've done the remote model, and that was quite interesting. That again was for 2 weeks, and the student was sat with me online for the majority of it. But we also agreed that, or realized very quickly, that I had to balance meetings as well. So there was lots of like touching in each day to see, or not touching in, sorry. There was lots of catching up at different points throughout the day to be able to see how they're getting on and going from there. We've also done the long thin model. And the long thin model was where I had one student who was working with me. He wanted to come to Mesomorphic for work placement, but it was outside of the pre-designated 1 week. And he came work with us for 6 weeks, every Friday afternoon, working on a specific project. And that worked out quite well for him. And that actually worked quite well for me, because I was in the middle of launching quite a few things at that point. So it was nice to be able to balance. You can have the afternoon, or you can have 1 day a week. That part-time work placement works really well, because it also gives the students a chance to reflect. And it gives you a chance to reflect as well and plan for that next week. So there's lots of different formats out there.
So many different ways that you can do it, and you can really shape it in a way that's going to work for your business. So if you know that certain months of the year are just no-goes based on business practice or something, that's okay. I've seen more and more companies offering things through summer, or perhaps if it's senior stage students who might be more appropriate if you're looking at future recruitment, they quite often will have an afternoon a week as a personal development time. Perhaps there's something that can be negotiated with the local authority there. It's really just about having the right conversations with the school or with the coordinator at the local authority to get started. So you are primarily a software development company. What kinds of roles are you getting high school students to come in and get some experience of? Is it particularly software development, or are you offering a variety of different tech roles?
Often or not, we get students come in saying we want to be a software developer. And we find that actually, as we unpick that a bit more throughout the work placements, it's actually more maybe it's more web design based that they want to work on, or maybe they've got more of an interest in the financial side or digital marketing. And whilst we have all those types of roles within the business, we're not a software development company. So we pull in people from our network to come and actually give a more of a more focused talk about web development and to give them some insight into those career placements. And I've worked with, because I've got the web developers, I've got the finance team. I mean, I use my accountant quite a lot to come and to give a bit of insight for our students to find a bit more about what it is to be working in accountancy. And then we talk about how that works into fintech. We've got the other students that the ones that are more interested in the social media and the digital marketing strategy. Yes, we have those skills in house, but also that's not our driving purpose for the business. So we will connect them with people in our network to come in and speak with them as well. So any role that they express an interest in, that's not necessarily in our wheelhouse, we will provide those opportunities throughout the week that they're with us.
Before we hit record today, we had a pretty interesting chat about some of the hacks or bits of good practice that you've tried out and found a lot of success with. And I thought something that we could talk a bit about is starting interviews, because it's not something that a lot of companies probably offer with work placements, but I think it makes a lot of sense. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about why you offer starting interviews before a pupil joins you for a week.
Having a starting interview, speaking with the students before the work placements helps a lot with the first day nerves. That you didn't want them to be sort of walking around trying to find the location and knowing they're going to be late for the first day. So having that interview, getting them into the office, getting them to meet the team, broke down a lot of barriers there. But also it gave us a point to sit down and find out what their expectations for the work placement was. Do you want, is there any particular roles you want to find out? And that's usually where we find out about if I have to bring any of our other network members in. But it also gives them the chance for not only for them to tell us their expectations, it also gave me a chance to plan activities around those expectations, but also to set my expectations of the work placement. And whilst that might sound a bit strict, it actually is a very useful activity to do, because we got really good to know where each other stands. And, they're coming into a business at the end of the day.
Expectations, yes. And when you say expectations, I assume you don't mean professional competency. You're talking about, what do I expect to see? Who do I expect to meet? What do I expect to do? What should I be wearing? These kinds of things. So the next thing on my list, conveniently, is you create a mock contract with your pupils.
And we also set out a mock contract. And in that mock contract, we talk about start times, end times. It covers lunches. It covers the process of what happens if a student is ill, who do they contact, when do you expect to know by. So the work experience handbook is pretty much a replica of our employee handbook. However, it's more tailored to the work placement experience. And it's also an activity that we give them to do more towards the end of that placement week, or long-term model, whatever format you're going to take. And we give them access to the actual document, and we ask them to update any parts of it that they feel was out of date or irrelevant to their experience, because it gives them something that they can see that. So it's something that they can see that they've had an input from, but also it's a really important learning tool for us, because it has highlighted some, not issues, but some things for us to think about as part of our continual improvement for the work placements.
It definitely sounds like one of those things that is a bit of work up front, but it will save you time in the long run and keep things running smoothly. So we spoke about that starter interview, and you told me that lasts no longer than an hour. And this mock contract is really an adaptation of your employee handbook. Is there anything else that you think is important to have in place before the pupil arrives?
We're going to have it in office. Having them for them to have their own desk is quite useful. And depending on what your business is, having a computer for them to use is also really, really helpful. I would suggest, however, that if you've got someone who does all your IT in-house, when you create a profile for them, just to make sure that profile gives them very limited access, not because they purposely want to go in and do any damage, but they're coming in for a week. They don't know your processes. They're already going to be overwhelmed with the learning that they're going to be going through. Trying to minimize the opportunities for them to make mistakes. And also something that we found that works really well was to give them their own mug. Having their own mug gives them that sense of ownership and a sense of belonging to the team. And it's just a little something for them to take away.
You're so right about the mugs. I bet you could form an autobiography of my life through ancient mugs I am in the cupboard. So a lot of the listeners today are going to be perhaps on the fence about offering work experience, work placements, experiential learning. This is your chance to share some last bits of advice and some motivation for the listeners. So I'm going to open the floor to you, Maria.
First piece of advice that I would share is just do it. It's probably not going to be anything like you've imagined in your head, for better or for worse. And so I would just say, go and do it. And you will find that it is an incredibly fast learning curve to start off with, but it will stabilize the more you do this. And I was spoken earlier on about the mock contracts and the interviews. Those two things have been really helpful for us. And I would strongly recommend that you incorporate that into your processes as well. And also to get them to keep a work diary that can be turned into a blog, because it's good for marketing. You can use quotes. There's lots of different things you can do about that. But again, it gives them something tangible that they've created and it's been published. Oh my gosh, it's something great for them to see and pull back on in the future, and they can reference it in their portfolio. The other thing I would say is to go into it with an open mind. Students have been told a lot of different job titles, and they will have these preformed conceptions of. They'll have these free-formed thoughts about what a job title actually is going to entail. And we know ourselves that, we're working in technology, and having a network of people behind you as well, that pulling your network in to fill in the gaps is actually really useful. It challenges you to think as a person as well of what other opportunities do I have within the business that would work towards these goals. Just give it a shot, and just be prepared for the good, the bad, and the complete learning journey that comes ahead of it. It's really exciting.
Lots of superb advice there. Thank you very much for your insights.
And I appreciate the opportunity to have a chat.
And I hope you as listeners are feeling inspired to follow in Maria's footsteps and offer some workplace experiential learning. Thanks again. For more information about learning by doing and experiential learning, check out our toolkit for employers offering young people technology work experiences. You'll find it on the Skills Development Scotland website alongside pick up and play guides, templates and easy to follow advice.